Angela Merkel losing key states to the Green Party.
Well, I
you
think
would have
it's
thought
very significant.
Strongest economy in the Eurozone and doing quite well, and under her rule, obviously recovering quite extensively, and now losing ground as well.
So she's performed well. The German economy is the strongest in the region, so you'd think she'd be winning votes. But in fact, I think the Green Party taking ground there is very significant, and it plays into your theory about the way the world works, which is that particularly people in rich countries, rich countries where, you know, they only have one set of forests, and the Japan disaster has really reminded people that there are downsides to all of this economic development. So I think it's going to be a factor to watch in elections around the world, where political parties that are organized around green issues gain in credibility and strength, and all of that stuff comes mainstream. So from an investment point of view, which is what we're here to talk about, that's good for anybody who's involved in cleanup technology, who's involved in emission control, and it's significant also for industries that are heavy energy users, because they're going to have to change their ways.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to Robert Mugabe. And implants, and I know you hold implants, so tell me a little bit about what you think.
So what happened today is that the Ministry of Indigenization in Zimbabwe came out and published a gazette which talks about how 51% has to be locally owned. They talk about transfers of equity, and this has to happen within 6 months, and they also talk about how a sovereign fund perhaps needs to be created to house these things. So Aquarius Platinum, which has got its Mimosa mine up there, took a big dive. Impala took a dive, although this had been anticipated. I think the key issue here is that, remember, Zimbabwe, they passed laws on Monday when the MDC guys have been thrown in jail, and then when Friday comes, then they overturn them again. So that's an issue to watch. The second thing is both the Chinese and the South Africans supposedly have these trade conventions with them, whereby they get their companies exempted. And in the South African case, it hasn't been spoken about for a while, but remember when they turned the lights back on, when Zim was in deficit on the electricity account, the deal was that they wouldn't mess with South African companies investing there. So we're not quite sure how it affects.
South African companies will be safe, and multinational, foreign multinational companies might not be safe? Who knows?
Look, things are going better in Zim since they dollarized that economy, but it's still crazy and everything is up in the air. Zimplatz has invested an enormous amount up there, as have Aquarius. We'll have to just wait and see.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to SAB Miller.
Yes, two companies with exciting rumors.
Metrics.
Exactly. So SAB Miller, I don't know, I've been discounting this one all week. We know that Altria, the old Philip Morris group, has got like a 30% stake in SAB Miller because they owned Miller and put it in. They're potentially sellers. There's been some talk that Anheuser-Busch, which is the big global player with the South American and the Budweiser interests, might be interested, but it sounds like too big to me to be taken seriously. Much more interesting, I think, is the transaction potential with Meterex. They've done all of their corporate reorganization. I think it's quite likely that it's one of the international global mining companies that's looking at beefing up its copper exposure by taking out Meterex. So they're trading at around R6.30. The trouble is, of course, they've moved up smartly by about R1 a share in the last couple of weeks, which I regret to say probably means people have been aware that there have been talks going on. So whether you climb into them now looking for a little bit more upside, I think it's dangerous.
Okay, let's look at what's been happening in Japan. The most recent headlines out of Reuters: Japan nuclear plant operator says plutonium found in soil, it's not harmful to human health. TEPCO's shares plummeting 20%, and we could see the president asked to step down, being criticized, of course, for misreading a lot of the radiation levels and a lot of the drama, and misreading a lot of things, in fact.
It's difficult to know quite how to read these things, because you see one report saying that the radiation levels are like 10 million times worse than they allowed, and then they say, no, that was an exaggeration. I'm not too sure. I mean, you'd have to just say it's a wait, watch and see until such time as we can gauge the impact. People in the area have been evacuated again. TEPCO, if anyone had investments in the utility, very questionable at this stage. Although it's similar to Eskom, you know, it's backed by the Japanese state. So it's hard to know quite how it would be affected long run, because it's got to be generating electricity for this modern nation. So not a happy situation. From an investment point of view, though, I think it's in the cake. You know, and short of a major meltdown which affects the region in some kind of Chernobyl-style explosion, I don't think we can say anything other than that we're all sitting waiting to see how they patch it up.
Okay, Charles Placer, does that mean anything to you?
He's some kind of central banker, right?
Okay, end of quantitative easing to
that topic.
and
Goodness.
quite hawkish comments.
Yeah.
Paul, how does that make you feel, the optimist?
You know, my
that
theory
is like
about
waiting for the liquidity to
QE2
come
and
through.
QE3 is that
Yes.
QE3 is never going to happen because the jobs numbers we've been seeing out of the US suggest that that economy is on the mend, so much so that any other form of quantitative easing is shortly going to be totally moot because it won't be required anymore. Game, set and match.
So is that it? Happy days.
You know, we'll have to wait and see how the numbers come in because we've got non-farm payrolls coming in early next week. I think we're going to do those.
And this is despite the fact that Goldman Sachs is talking about an imminent downgrade.
From 3.5 to 3.
Yes.
3, that sounds like a good number for an economy that large. I mean, okay, 3.5 would be better, but there's nothing wrong with 3.
You win. Paul Theron from Vestat, of course, joining us for Mad Markets today.